Welcome to the Get Inspired with Gerd show, brought to you by Gerd's Handel. Join us each week to be inspired, informed and uplifted with some of the most inspirational and motivational guests from around the world. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay inspired.
Hello and welcome to Get Inspired with Gerds. I'm your host and today I have a special guest with me who's changing many lives with her one-to-one coaching, workshop and talks. Khagram to me is an absolute inspiration. She is a survivor of mental abuse and a violent relationship that ultimately led her to forgive, forget and self-heal herself, which is absolutely amazing. This is something that we all need to learn. She now actually uses her story and has devised techniques as an intuitive facilitator to help men, women, young children to let go of their past and find their inner greatness. Illa, welcome to my radio show and thank you for joining me.
Hi Gerds, it's lovely to be on the show with you and thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh bless you. No, it's a pleasure of mine actually because you have so much to teach the listeners and it all stems from your past. Can you tell the listeners what you've been through starting with your childhood?
Oh, absolutely. So I guess my whole life story started when I was a young girl and I was a very vibrant a young child. I was always dreaming. I was always using my imagination to create and recreate things. So where kids would be doing one thing, I'd be doing something totally different, but so happy in myself. And I guess my whole life took a massive turn in a PE class. When I was in a PE class, I was daydreaming as usual, and the PE teacher threw the ball at me.
Oh.
And it broke my finger.
What?
It broke my young little finger, and I think I was just about 6 years old at that time, and I had big tears rolling down my eyes, and I was like, my finger hurts. And he shouted to me, he says, well, next time you daydream, he said, I'm going to make sure I throw that ball even harder. Do you understand? And I was like nodding my head, but I really didn't understand, but I was too scared to understand why he'd done that, because I really didn't know why he'd done that. And it broke my fingers. It's left a bent mark on my little finger now.
Wow, is that like your left on or your right?
On my left hand, on my left little finger. It's like the finger comes and it comes out and then comes back. So it's a permanent reminder for me there. But I guess it was that point in my life where unconsciously I made that decision that I was not good enough. I wasn't enough to be who I was, and there had to be something else and to be something that I'm not. And all I think the whole concept of self-worth probably was just stamped in there. And then I carried on, going through life, and always used to find myself shying away. So I'd be shy before I'd meet a group of people and then come out of myself and then be the most vibrant person again. Now, at that young age, I loved music. So playing an instrument, dancing, singing, I loved it. And it was an uncle he's passed away now, My uncle said to me when I said that what I wanted to do was be a musician, I wanted to be a dancer. And he said to me, that's no career for a young Asian girl. He says, you're classed as a prostitute. And I didn't actually understand that whole mythology of it. I really didn't understand it. But it kind of really stopped me from fulfilling. And so what happened was I'd go to classes and I'd stop, and I'd go to classes and I'd stop, and I wouldn't take anything seriously because deep down, those voices were playing in my head. And so they were stopping me from moving forward. So as I grew up, we went on holiday. So I grew up, I had all my schooling and everything in England. And when we finished GCSE A-levels, my friends, two of my best friends, were going away on holiday to Kenya. So my mum and dad said that if you guys want to go with them, why don't you go? So me and my elder sister went. And when we went, we were just there literally having fun and enjoying ourselves. And somebody put a proposal to my uncle, my dad's elder brother there. Oh. And my dad's elder brother said to myself and my dad that, look, some point in your life you are going to need to get married, so why don't you just give these people a chance and have a look? So I was like, yeah, but I don't know anything about anyone. How do I just move to this country and live with somebody I don't live with? Were my questions. I was only 18 years old.
Wow.
And then when we went to see them, all that needed to be said was that his mother plays the sitar and that they are very musical, and that's it. That's all that was needed. So I married for the wrong reasons. For the right reasons for me at that point, because of the lack of in my life growing up. So I got married, and I was adamant, no, this is where I want to get married. And all I could think of was, oh my God, this would be so beautiful to be in a family where the music is there and I could continue pursuing my musical dream. And, when I discussed this with the family, and they said, oh, yes, you can continue your studies, further education there. And there's a university right around the corner from us. You can go there and you can teach music, you can teach dance, and you could do all of this stuff. So I got really excited. I thought, you know what? Life's about adventure, and you just got to take the adventure as it comes along. And as soon as I got married, getting married was horrific, because I knew on my wedding day it was the wrong decision. I knew. But because of the conflicts that we go through within ourselves, oh my God, how can I do this to my parents? My mum actually even said to me, she knew it was wrong for me. She said, you know what? She says, you can still say no.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, for me, all I could think about was, what would it do to my dad? What would it do to my mum and dad's reputation? And what would the world think? And I went ahead with it. And I remember even on my wedding day, it was just a horrible, horrible feeling, because he had all his family there, and I just thought, this is not the life that I want. It was just awful, but I continued. And then eventually, after 3 weeks of being in England, we moved to Kenya. And when I moved to Kenya, it was like this big, massive 7-bedroom house. And I was just overwhelmed because it was so lonely. I was so lonely. And I thought, I've got no friends. I don't know anybody here. I had to wear a sari, cover my head. And then when in the evenings came, nobody came home till 8, 9 o'clock in the evening. So I'd be on my own all day. So there was a family of 9 living in this house. But I'd be on my own all day. Didn't know the language, had no freedom. And then when I voiced out that I wanted to go to the university or to go and work or to do something for myself, they said, no, daughters-in-law of this household don't do things like that.
What?
And it was just, my heart broke into a million pieces at that point, because I was told lies. And I didn't have a voice, because I didn't know who I...
Oh, hello?
Hello?
Oh, yeah, you're there again. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, this is not, what I wanted in my life. So as that life continued, it started off with my ex-husband's sister, actually. She was a very spoilt, very dominating character in that household, and everything she did and said went. To the extent where even in the evenings, when my husband would come home from work, my ex-husband would come home from work, I'd go running to the gate, because it was just somebody who was mine had come home. And then she'd start overtaking that, so she'd go before I could even go. And then the only time I got with him was alone was lunchtime. And then she ended up just coming in the room at lunchtime as well. And not so much so, but even in the night, she'd ended up sleeping in our bed with us. She was my age. And, I attempted to say that this is wrong, it's not right, I don't want this kind of life.
Yeah. And
she didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with her sleeping there, talking to her brother all night. And it was just horrific. I had to cover my head when him and his mother were in the same room. And so every evening after dinner, they'd all end up in my room, and they'd be sitting there for hours on end, and I'd just be sitting there like a lost soul, because I wasn't included in conversations. And it was just a really, really hard phase. And I think my heart was crying from the inside from that point onwards. And then, abuse started, like really awful verbal abuse. taunting my parents, taunting me left, right, and centre, making fun of me. And it was constant, and they'd literally be bickering away. And I think, the big thing about this is that when somebody does this on a mental and emotional note, you've got no scars to show anybody. You can't prove it to anybody. And, then the crux came where basically, because I was so scared all the time, I was really scared. I was scared of his mother. I was scared of his father. I was scared of his brother. I was scared of him. I was just living with fear in that house all the time of the mental abuse I was getting. And then I remember one particular day where he opened his cupboard and he realized that, okay, there was some money missing. And he said to me, who came in this room? Why is the money missing? And I said, I don't know. And I remember him like moving his hand, and it really went bang across my face and I went against the wall. And I still question to this day whether he meant to do it or whether he didn't mean to do it, but because he got so, but he didn't have any remorse in him.
Wow.
And, I was so scared. I remember I've got tears in my eyes now. I don't talk about it.
Aww.
That, it was such an awful time because I was scared. I was just scared.
Wow.
So, all that happened. And then I think at one point I started to rebel. And when I started to rebel, it blew up into even more verbal accusations and abuse and all of that stuff. And I remember one point him getting so annoyed because I'd fought back verbally that he grabbed my hair and dragged me out into the kitchen area and outside. And I remember the people who used to work, the house domestic people who used to work there, were just so compassionate with me. They were probably my only friends there, and they were witness to all of this. But unfortunately, there's nobody alive today to, back up my story, as my ex-husband used to so blatantly put it.
They're all I was going to say, these characters, they're all the same. What they do is they build in fear into you, and then after what they'll do is, so they know that you might say something, so they'll build in more fear into you, saying that actually, if they find out, or nobody cares, and they make you even feel more worthless.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly, what happened is then my whole self-worth was completely out the head. But, understand this, that probably was the voice of the teacher in my head. And so I was actually justifying it. So everything outside was a reflection of what was already going inside of me anyway. And I think that's really important to note here, because otherwise we end up blaming the whole world when we haven't taken the responsibility that actually at some point in my life, maybe I made that decision to not believe in myself, to not love who I was, to not have self acknowledgement, whether unconsciously or consciously. But this went on and on and on, and it was awful, because it was at one point where his great grandmother was there, and she loved me. From everybody in that family, she really loved me. She's no longer here. She passed away while I was there, but she literally looked at me like her own child. If there was something to do on her medically that she needed help with, she'd always come to me and ask me. So one day when I was up there, I was just nursing a wound she had. She saw a great big massive bruise on my arm, and it was really black, and she said to me, "What's this?" And I said, "Oh, I just banged against the cupboard downstairs." I don't know why, but that's the words that just come out from you to protect everybody. But that happened at point when my child was born. So what happened over this period was that my self-worth went so downhill because I didn't know how to get out of this situation, because I wasn't leaving the house, so I was cooped up in this house with only literally dogs to play around with.
Wow.
And the house help, who were really magnificent. That it was at this point where I think it was my lowest point, and I said to him, and I said, "You know what?" I said, "I don't know why I'm here." I said that I might as well not be here. I said, "I wish I was dead." And he says, "Oh, well, why don't you?" And he handed me a lighter. Now, as much as I say that, yes, I did this, I, attempted suicide, but he handed me the lighter for a person whose mind was so completely belittled at that point that I set light to myself.
No, Illa.
And, he literally banged me on the floor, threw a blanket over me, threw water over me, kicked me while I was down there. And then he went out and shouted and called all his family. And they all came downstairs, and all they did was give pity to him.
Yeah, they'll shout at you, won't they?
Yeah, they didn't care about me. And all I kept saying to them was, I need to get myself to the hospital. I need to go to the hospital. And she said to me, his mother, she says, well, just sleep in the downstairs box room for now. She goes, we'll go in the morning. So bear in mind, you've got temperatures ranging from anything from 35 degrees onwards in Mombasa. That's where I was. I was sleeping in a box room with just a fan, and I was in pure agony. I must have passed out so many times through that night, but I was crying because I was in so much pain. Nobody even sat with me. Nobody stayed with me, and nobody was even helping me. Then in the morning, they busily prepared all the food for everybody, made food for everybody's lunch and breakfast and all of that. Then at 10:30, about 10:30, they came in the room. And by this time, I had bubbles on my whole body, literally the size of a beach ball.
Oh my God.
That's how big the bubbles on my body were, from my neck downwards. And that's when they suddenly realized, oh my God, this is not good. So they bunged me in a car, got me in a car. As soon as I got to the hospital, the staff there knew, because I was passing out then, the staff knew that, this is a very serious case. I was rushed into ICU, taken out there, taken into surgery, and then I spent 35 days in hospital.
Gosh.
And even in hospital for those 35 days, 3 days, my ex-husband didn't come to see me because he was angry because I did something to tarnish their name.
It's always a shame.
And then, yeah, it was awful. And at that time, there was a nurse there. And literally, if I can say angels come into your life, she was an absolute angel for me in my life, because she literally fed me. I had a frame over my body. I was completely naked under this frame. And, I'd been in surgery about 3 times by that time. So I couldn't feed myself, couldn't do anything. This nurse did absolutely everything for me. Then in the evenings, he'd come and he'd sit there. He'd bring his beer. He'd sit there having beer in the hospital because it was a private room, and continue whirling abuse at me while I was not able to fight back for myself. And then when I got home, after 35 days, when I got home, there was a lot of care that needed to be taken for me, because I need to be sitting in a bath with salt water and nurse my wounds and stuff. And his mother-in-law literally put a foldable bed in my bedroom, and she says, that's your bed from now on. What? And it was just a horrible way to treat somebody who'd gone through this trauma, and they didn't even understand or get why this had all happened. And over those few days, I think for me, it was the point in my life where I honestly say that there was some divine force that really got me through all of this, because there was some innate strength that came out. And all I felt was peace. I felt peace. And it was at that point in my life I got pregnant. And, for the right or wrong reason, away from that point, obviously, because I didn't know there was a way out. I got pregnant, and that was probably the happiest day of my life, and it was just wonderful being pregnant. But even throughout the pregnancy, his sister was constantly tormenting. To one point, where I remember in the kitchen there was a religious function going on. I said, I remember doing this at my mum's house. I said, we used to have so much fun. And that's it. That's all it took. And she triggered off, and she went off into one angry tirade of abuse at me, saying, oh, yeah, your mum taught you everything, didn't she? It was very sarcastic and very belittling words. And she was shouting. I was about 7 months pregnant. So I kind of collapsed. I had a blackout because, all this shouting with me. My ex-husband at that point took me into the room. our room was downstairs on the ground floor, so she went outside near the window and continued hurling abuse.
Christ, wow.
And, at that point, that was the only point in my life I say my ex-husband really took care of me. But it was probably because I was carrying his child at that time. And so when my baby was born, I literally gave my whole life and soul to him. My whole life was given to him. It was the happiest day of my life because it felt like this angel was there to give me strength, to give me love, to have that unconditional quality brought back into my life. And I remember, because I was breastfeeding, and I remember 3 months, my ex-mother-in-law saying that, from today onwards, I'm going to give him some, normal milk. So she says, don't breastfeed him this afternoon. So he was crying, and he was crying and crying, and I was like, okay, she's still not here. And I ended up starting to breastfeed him. I just breastfeed him because he was crying for milk, and I wasn't going to do that to him. And I remember her coming in there, and she says, I told you, didn't I, to wait? And she threw the bottle near where I was, and then she left. And I continued breastfeeding my child until he was about 1 year and 2 months. And I thought, there's nothing that's going to stop me from doing this. But that was the only thing that I did. And even if I had to do it secretly, I did it secretly. But from that day onwards, I wasn't very liked by her. And then when he was growing up and he was old enough to understand stuff, he used to come to me and start calling me names like stupid and idiot. And, and I was like, where are you learning this from, Mir? I used to say, where are you learning these words from? And he used to say, Moti Mama is teaching me, his grandmother.
Wow.
She taught me. And so I was sitting down without belittling my ex-grandmother, because it's a child and you confuse him. I'd say, you know what? I said, sometimes you've got to listen to your heart. How does it feel for you to say this? And he said, it's not nice, Ma. He said, it's not nice because you're my ma. And it was beautiful, to hear this child speak like this. But it continued. And so what was happening was where they were tormenting him against me. And then it was at this point where even the abuse started and all of that started up again, and where, the great-grandmother saw the bruise on my arm.
Wow.
And so she said to me, what happened? And I said, I banged into a cupboard.
I'm guessing she didn't believe that then.
Yeah, and she really didn't. She says to me, now you tell me the truth. And I couldn't hold inside any longer, so I burst out and I told her everything that had been going on in the house. And next morning she went and told my ex-father-in-law, and I said, when I went upstairs, and he says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, you know what? I said, I can't live like this anymore, because even my child is suffering. My child is being tormented. When he's going upstairs, my ex-sister-in-law had a baby, and she was at my house all the time.
Oh, gosh.
And when, me and my son would be constantly told off about making noise or playing or laughing, and then to a point where when she came in with her baby, she went upstairs and he ran after because he wanted to play with the baby. And as soon as he got upstairs, they banged the door. So he was outside the door, they banged the door shut, and he came running downstairs. Now, as a mother, I know for a fact, whether it's a human or an animal, no mother will take any torture like this lightly for her child. And it was at that point I made that decision. I'm getting out of this with my child.
Wow.
I'm not going to let him live this kind of life. And so that went on, for another year or so. When he was 4 years old, I got an opportunity where I could come to England, which was after a good, 5 years.
Wow.
And I came to England, and I was going to come on my own with my son. So my son was 4 years old. But prior to this, the last time that I came to England was when my son was 10 months old. And rather than me being able to go on my own to spend time with my family, with my son, he sent his sister.
Oh, God. Control freak.
And his sister was literally, she was horrible. She was awful. She wouldn't let my family play with my son. She would constantly bickering at me. She'd constantly being on the phone, complaining about me, complaining about my family to my ex-husband. So my
What did your
ex-husband
dad
would be on the
say?
phone to me and telling me off of why I'm upsetting his sister so much.
Oh God. What did your dad say?
My dad was the first time in his life that he realized that everything is not as it is. And he said to me, "Are you happy?" He says, "Yes." I said to my dad, "Yes, I'm really happy." And he says, "You don't look happy." And he says, "Are you being treated like this there?" And he says, "You know what?" He goes, "Your father's still living." And he says that my house is always open for you. You know that. You say one word and we'll do whatever we can do to keep you here. And you know, my thoughts at that time, Gerds, were?
Yeah.
My thoughts were that no, I can't do that to my child to live without his father.
My God.
That's what my thoughts were. And that's what I continued saying to my mom, my dad. My mom and dad even got my friends involved. And my friends were sitting there because they knew I wasn't happy. I was skinny. I was so skinny. I was, you could see I was haggard. And God, I was weighing less than about 9 stones at that point. And you really, really just, cheekbones were inside and all of that stuff. And then my friends were like, we know you're not happy, so why are you sticking out this? I says, I'm not going to allow my child to grow up without his father. And so I was adamant, and I said I went back. And as soon as I went back, it was like the abuse I'd suffered was nothing compared to what was to come.
Wow.
And it was just horrific. I mean, certain things like, the lights go off there in Kenya a lot and the electricity goes off and you've got a baby and the baby's crying. And where's your priority? Your priority is with your child.
Yes.
And I'd be told that I'm worthless because I didn't cook the food for his sister and all of this stuff. And I did at one point start writing. I wrote all of this down in a book, and when all this pain started up, I tore the whole book apart because I was like, God, there's no way out for me here. And so when he was 4 years old, I became wiser and knew that, okay, coming back after I go back to England is not going to be an option because I won't be living. And so when I got to England when he was 4 years old, because my ex, so it was worse 10 times. And so I knew if I went back this time and I came back, I would literally not have a life there for my child. Yeah, I said to my ex, I need to come on the morning. So they did this kind of thing. They gave you this false hope that you're going there to be free, to be with your mum and dad for a little while. And then all of a sudden, in the morning that you're travelling, they turn up and say, "Oh, I'm coming as well."
Oh my God. This is like something out of a Bollywood film.
I know. Do you know when you say this to people and it's like they couldn't believe it? And I'm like, you know what? I could say this 10 million times and the story will never change because it's exactly what it happens. I still feel it every time I talk about it. You know, how real it was.
Yeah.
And sorry
to cut you in. Sorry about this. It just makes me realise that it reminds me of like these TV shows, these Asian TV shows, that are all dramatic, the mother-in-law, the daughter-in-law, or the sister-in-law, and there's all these arguments going on. And it's like almost that generation are watching it, and actually that's what they're copying.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I often sat back and I thought to myself, when did you guys learn to become like this?
Yeah.
When did love be taken out of your heart? That's what I used to sit there and wonder. And so every day I used to wake up and think, okay, today's a new day, so still be a jovial myself, greet everybody with love and compassion, and you still get the same thing day in and day out. And so when I got to England, with my son, and I said to my ex-husband at that point, I'm not coming back, but I'll never keep my child away from you. So you'll have the freedom to come and see him, be with him, see him grow up. I'd never do that. But I said, you need to understand, I've gone through all these years. I can't put him through this. And so he wouldn't let me out of his sight at my mum and dad's house, and it was awful. I'd even go to the bathroom, he'd stand outside the bathroom.
Oh my God.
It was horrible. It was really horrible. Then all of a sudden on that day, he made his decision that he said, he goes, my sister's in-laws at that point. He says, oh, they're from Kenya, we're going to go and stay with them. So it's all a play, because if I'm with my sister's in-laws, obviously I wouldn't do anything drastic. So he kept me there, and I thought, I don't even know these people. Why am I spending my time in England, not with my parents, and with these people I don't even know? And what happened was, he said, oh, he's going to the bank, because he said he's changed our tickets and we're going that same night. And so my heart sank, my heart sank. And I thought, if I go back now, I'm never coming back alive. And it was in that split second, I had literally 10 minutes to grab whatever I did. I just grabbed stuff for my child. I grabbed a few of his clothes. I grabbed his toys. I took his hand, and I literally got out of the house, and round the corner I rang a friend, and I said, please stay here, help me. And she was there in seconds. She got there, took me, and I said, look, what I need you to do is I need you to take me to a refuge, because if you keep me here with my parents or anybody else, they're going to suffer a lot of verbal abuse. So I went to Southall, and I ended up in the refuge there, where I stayed, there for a good few months. But as soon as I got there, with the witness of so many people, I rang my ex-husband to say that, look, you need to take this seriously. I'm not coming back, and I'm not going to let my child come back to that either. And so he took me to court for abduction. And
wow.
So this case went to the High Court. The judge ruled abduction out, because he said it's absurd. There was no way on earth that she was abducting her child. She called you, so it was curbed out. But he said, because of Hague Convention, this case would need to be dealt with in the Kenyan courts.
Oh no.
So I said, well, I'm a British subject. I'm a British citizen. I can't work in Kenya. How do I pay for the fees? So my ex-husband said to the judge, he goes, oh, that's okay, I'll give her money every month. In reality, did the legal system not understand this? That what was he really going to give me money every month so I could fight a case against him in the Kenyan courts? This is where the injustice of this legal system came in for me. And I thought, did they really believe all of this stuff? And so the judge said, but for this 1 month, he would have to stay in England, and the child will stay with his father. So bear in mind, my child had never been away from me, not even a single second.
Oh, no.
And all of a sudden, he was now given to his father for that month to make sure that we reconcile. And the judge's theory around that was, if my ex-husband starts to see the responsibility that he has to bring up the child, he'll think differently.
Did you at that point tell them that he'd been physically abusing you and mentally abusing you?
Yes, it was all out there, all open out there, and they did nothing. I mean,
wow.
Here's the biggest thing. When the day came and he was allowed to take his passport, I didn't even
Sorry, I can't hear you again. It's gone.
Yeah.
Can
you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you say that again?
Yeah, so when the deadline came, he took his passport and he was out this country with my son, and I didn't even know what airline they went on, when they travelled, what they travelled. And I was erratic. I was frantic, because I was like, God, he's taken away my baby.
Oh, no.
And he's literally turned all at my child. That much that if I left him, I abandoned my child. So my son is 21 today, but he's grown up with that whole thinking that I've abandoned him. And I never did, because I fought tooth and nail to get to him. I mean, picking up the phone, I rang and I used to ring every day, 3-4 times a day, and they'd never give the phone to my son.
Wow.
I'd write letter. Every day there was a letter that'd be sent, and they never gave a single letter to my son.
The control freaks, that's why, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so obviously my son grew up thinking, that my mother's left me. So I think my son was about 8 years old, and somebody bless them, and I call them angels in disguise, let me know And she's passed away now as well, bless her. She said to me, they're coming to England with your son. They're on this flight if you want to see your son. So, you know, I got really happy. I went and, it was around Christmas, I went and bought some presents, wrapped them up, wrote a letter with my address, my email address and everything on there. And when they came out the terminal, I said, Mir. And his father said to him, oh my God, she's here. Run, Mir, run. So all of this happened in the terminal, a child of 8 running, me running after him, saying, Mir, why are you running? I don't understand why you're running. And his father shouting at the back, Mir, run as fast as you can, I'll find you. And it was such big drama. So it was his brother, my ex-husband's brother, literally rammed a trolley into my legs. Then he grabbed my arm and he pulled me back so that I wouldn't go near them. Now, there were witnesses, and it's all in the police file as well. There were witnesses who saw this, and the witnesses called the police in. And the police said to me, he goes, you know, you've got a clear-cut case for abuse there, an assault. So what do you want us to do? And I said, what will happen to my son? And he says, unfortunately, he's carrying some legal papers, which means that he has total rights over his son. And that would mean that if your ex-husband and his brother were arrested, your son would be sent back to his family. Now, girls, just understand this, and any mothers out there, no mother would do this to her son. And I couldn't do this to him. So I was like, so you're saying to me that if I have my ex-husband arrested, my son will not be able to come to me. So he'll not only have lost his mother, he'll have lost his father too.
Oh, God.
So I said, no, I'm not prepared to do that. I'm not prepared to do that. So it went, you know, the police were, bless them, they were really good. But they said, because it's a domestic issue, we can't get involved. But he says that, you know, we've got enough witnesses that even if you turned your wish around and said, yes, I want them arrested, we'll go and arrest them now. So think hard about this long term. But all I could think about was my son. And then, you know, the solicitor just got involved again. And they said to the solicitor, oh, yes, she's his mother. She can see him whenever she wants. And as soon as I ring, they're abusive on the phone. And as soon as I made some arrangements to go and see him, they're saying, well, they're not here, they're out. So that happened for the 3 weeks they were there.
Gosh.
And so they went back and I never saw him. And, you know, it's been a hard journey.
I can imagine. Wow.
Yeah.
So obviously this is just, I'm shot for words. I've actually been crying whilst I've been listening to you. It just seems like, for me, like from what I'm hearing and being ethnic myself, so much drama for no reason. It's just, I don't know what, there's a lot of problems within our community.
Yeah.
And it's like they inflict it onto the next generation and the generation after that, but they don't realise what they're doing is damaging the future generation.
Yeah.
And they don't see that if they don't change themselves, they are creating more depression, they are creating more heartache. I see a lot of ethnic women in particular, in the ethnic minority, they're on depression tablets or antidepressants because they can't handle what's happening. And the reality is they don't have no self-worth of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you know the innocent one in this is that little boy who's not little anymore. He's 21, you know. But not a day goes by where I don't think about him. Wow. Not a day goes by when I don't wish that all of this could have been different. But what could I have done that was different? And you know, one day I hope he'll open his eyes, and I hope one day he'll know the truth, because that's all I can do is sit here and just pray, because he's been so tarnished that when I did connect with him a few years ago on Facebook, it was the most wonderful experience to reconnect with him. And we were talking about all the gifts that he has, and which is so many of my gifts. And it was just such a beautiful experience. And all of a sudden, he went bang, bang, bang with all this legal palaver that had happened. Yeah. And he said to me, you did this and you did that. And it was nothing like it happened. Yeah. And he quoted stuff off the legal paper. And, you know, it says, Justice Hughes has said this and you had done this. And, you know, my father had tried for years to see you.
Wow.
And
gosh.
have suffered this abuse at the hands of his father, I will not suffer this abuse at the hands of my child.
Yeah.
And I cut myself off energetically from that, because it hurt me. And I remember when that happened, all the pain of the last few years, I was so ill after that period. I remember crying for a month non-stop. I wouldn't leave the house, all of this things that had happened. And I had to learn to start to love myself again. I had to learn to start to awaken the love in my heart for me, no more than anything else, that the love for me, so that I can move forward, and then to understand.
So how did you heal yourself then? Obviously, you said you created that self-worth, self-love. What else did you do?
Do you know what I did? I meditated a lot. I meditated so much. I sat hours and hours sitting in meditation. I spent hours and hours just reciting mantras. And then I started to, look at the outside world, and I started to come across such beautiful people. And none of these people knew ever what had gone on in my life, yet they were giving so much love to me. And since the time this had happened, from 1998 to this date onwards, I've never come across anybody who has ever been horrible to me. People have been just so beautiful, so loving. So I do believe that the universe literally put these angels all around me, just so that I could be in this loving space to keep healing. But I had to do a lot of self-work, and it was that journey that took me on to, becoming an NLP master practitioner, doing all sorts of modalities, doing timeline therapies. All I was doing was I was looking for ways to heal myself, it was not a case of, okay, I'm going to learn this, just create a business out of it. I learned it to heal myself. And through that, I created my own process of the things that I did for myself that I know absolutely work, because I'm standing here, vibrant in my own beingness. So a lot of my programs are all centered around the authentic self progression, and it's about understanding who your authentic self is and embracing that. So that's what set me to, how to become authentic, because nobody becomes authentic overnight. We play roles, we play different roles. So if you're like most people, you play a number of different roles of different archetypes. You play out being a mother, a sister, a brother, a father. You play so many different roles. You play out the role of an employee, an employer, a lover, a carer. But it doesn't mean that you're not authentic in all of those roles, because you can still be authentic and play those different roles. And, it's about that flexibility, but understanding where your core values are of who you are, and understanding the gap, between that honesty and the untruth, as I call it.
Very interesting. Yeah, I totally relate with that. I definitely think I think everyone's authentic though, my dear. I think they forget that they're authentic because we're part of this system.
Yeah, and it's such a good point you've made there, because it is about remembering your authenticity.
Yeah.
When people are let to be free in an environment where they're really happy and they're flourishing, they are who they are, and then they forget. And so a lot of my life has been dedicated to creating this whole process about helping people to find their spiritual truth, their authentic self. So I've not only worked with families to bring families together, but I've worked with mothers, who are wanting to get pregnant, because it's about clearing that energy before they even bring a child into this earth. About working with fathers as well, working with couples who have split up, and working to get them to be, there for the child and for each other, but in a loving way, to understand, okay, paths change. And not only that, but I've gone into schools as well, and to work with young people as well, so that they can start to step into their truth. So it's taken me on a lot of paths, and not only that, but it took me to the school that where the teacher broke my little finger.
Oh God!
And you talk about how the universe works and how bizarre this happened, because it was one of the schools that took up my services, and went into school, and I did an assembly with 400 kids.
Wow.
Which is on YouTube at the moment. And when I did the assembly, I had tears of overwhelm because I made peace. I made peace with my past. And I think this is a real key distinction here, because most people talk about forgiveness. When you forgive, it's almost a blame game, that because of this person or that situation, this happened to me. And then you take away the responsibility. You take away your ability to respond to stuff. So I literally look at this as, okay, making peace with the situation and releasing it.
Love it. I absolutely love what you're doing. It's just beautiful to hear. You're amazing, my dear. I don't even think you know it.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're an absolute inspiration. Yeah, wow. I have no words. My dear, we are coming towards the end of the show. I wanted to ask you quickly, what are you most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for my heart. I'm most grateful for being able to be loving and to be loved. And that is, one of the things that I say every day to God. Thank you, God, for giving me a heart that loves.
And what are your 5 top tips for someone who's currently going through mental, physical, or emotional abuse?
First and foremost, I'd say live with integrity, because it takes courage. It takes courage to develop and preserve integrity. So start by looking at the choices that you make. You'll often intuitively know what the right or wrong choices are. And I say, live with that integrity. Listen to that inner voice within yourself. And when you feel that sense of unease, understand that. So that's number 1. The second one was communicate honesty. And I say honestly, not necessarily with the person that you're experiencing this with, but with yourself. Because when you are honest with yourself about what's going on, your communication skills have a different message. We talk about emotional intelligence. Your emotions are high, intelligence is low. And so the communication around that becomes very erratic. So come from that place. Breathe. Most people forget to breathe, right?
Very true.
and breathe correctly, breathe with full nature. And what I say with that is, wake up in the morning, look outside and look and observe nature, and just say, what a wonderful day it is today. So that's a really crucial thing. I still do it to this day. The other one is the 20-second meditation, which is wake up in the morning, stretch. Babies, look at babies and animals. What do? They stretch, right? They stretch completely, but we forget the simplicity of that. And so I say, stretch like babies. Just stretch until your body completely releases, all the stuff and tension that's in there. And then do the 20-second meditation, which is just smile. Just smile for 20 seconds. And smile at your partner. Smile even if you're having issues with them. Smile at your children if you have any. Smile at things around you. Just 20 seconds. And maybe do that throughout the day, because you cannot be angry or hurt or frustrated with a smile on your face.
It's so true.
It is absolutely such a beautiful, beautiful, simple task as well. And is that 4? And then is that 4?
Oh, I'm not sure actually. Well, give me another one. It's fine.
Okay. And then the last one is, a lot of people use affirmations like, oh, I love myself. I love myself. Well, guess what? Your little brain is going, no, you don't. You're not worthy. You're not worthy. So I say, use this to your advantage and just say, why do I love myself? And so your little brain will go, oh, because you're beautiful, because you're talented. And it's a beautiful affirmation to use. So I used that for years, and it really works. Why do I love myself? Why am I so confident? So just any word that resonates with you, rather than using the affirmation, which was then unconsciously your question, use the affirmation, use it in question.
I'll tell you why I was laughing.
Simple tips and simple tools that you can use.
I'll tell you why I was laughing, because I literally just thought of that in my head, and I was like, because I'm worth it.
Yes, there you go.
I just thought of the advert in my head.
Oh, perfect.
No, I love that. That's amazing tips. Thank you so much. Guys out there, if you know any of you guys are suffering with any kind of mental, emotional, or any type of abuse, definitely take on board what Illa's saying, because Illa she knows she knows what she's talking about, and she's lived it. So just please take in consideration what she's saying. But thank you, Illa. Thank you for being on my show. I'm just so proud to have you on the show and just giving the listeners all this information and sharing your story. It's just been amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. It's been an absolute honour, and thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. Before we go, though, where can my listeners find you?
They can find me if they go onto my website, which is www.radiantlotus.co.uk, or just send me a quick email, which is at info@radiantlotus.co.uk.
Perfect.
And I'll always reply.
Perfect. Thank you, my dear. Well, I look forward to getting you back on the show in the near future, because I definitely will have you back talking maybe about self-love and self-worth and just kind of talking more in depth about that. But yeah, thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, girls.
Bless you. Well, you take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
God bless you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, what an amazing person. Illa, you're an absolute inspiration. Wow, you've just blown me away with your story. It's so important that, you know, guys, that we need to learn to love and respect ourselves. Because if we don't love to learn and respect ourselves, people will insult you, people will hurt you, people will put you down. And you need to realise that nothing is greater than being yourself and loving yourself. Because if you can't love yourself, you can't love others back in the right manner. But unfortunately, it is the end of the show. Just before I head off, don't forget that you can find me on Twitter at IamGurds, it's IamGurds, and on Facebook at Get Inspired with Gurds, where I'll be bringing you lots of inspirational and motivational quotes. And also, I'd love for you guys to check out my video on YouTube. It's actually called Free Hugs in London, #GurdsHundle, where I actually spent half a day in Trafalgar Square just giving out free hugs, because we all deserve a hug once in a while. Let me know what you guys think. But before I leave, I'm going to leave you on this quote. Forgive the past and the past will let go of you. Believe me, if you don't, you will never be happy. Right, guys, it is the end of the show. Better say bye. But you take care, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.
Join us each week to be inspired, informed and uplifted with some of the most inspirational and motivational guests from around the world. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay inspired.